Tonight's event is co-sponsored by Catholic Relief Services and the Center for Interfaith Cooperation. And I'm proud to serve on the board of the Center for Interfaith Cooperation. I think what I'd like to do is have Ruth Ellen Homer, who is also on the board, come up just for a minute and tell you about the CIC. You can get involved if you like. We do a lot of really cool things. Then after that, we'll introduce a couple of people from CRS, and then we'll get the ball rolling.
I'm Ruth Ellen Homer, as Dr. Atlas said. He and I met as founding board members at the Center for Interfaith Cooperation in 2012. We're good friends. We have served on the same committee at the Center for Interfaith Cooperation, and we're just very happy to be able to tie his work at Marian University with the mission of CIC, which is that we want to build ourselves into an organization that brings together Hoosiers of many faiths in a community. That's exactly what we're doing here. We have all of us gathered together at a Catholic institution. Many of us are not Catholic. I'm not Catholic. But we are here to see what the Catholic Church, through Catholic Relief Services, is doing worldwide to help people who truly need help to do things for them that they cannot possibly do for themselves. CIC began in 2012. It's now a powerful force for good in central Indiana. CIC has 40 board members who are clergy and laity from every major faith tradition. We are very, very proud of that. Almost every day now, CIC offers events designed to bring people together, to learn more about how religious faith can inform our understanding of the world and its history, its current events, where we are trying to go. CIC has co-sponsored these global studies lectures for the past several years. I'd say 4, maybe even 5 years, wouldn't you, Pierre? We feel this effort is well designed by Dr. Atlas. He helps all of us better understand how we can contribute to our world. Thank you.
So, Nick Sellers, where are you? Nick is going to talk to you about, especially for the students, about Catholic Relief Services student ambassadors. Right, there we go.
Yeah, real quick, guys. So you're going to hear about rice bowls, and we're going to be passing out the rice bowls at our Ash Wednesday Mass. That'll be in about 2 weeks. And if you guys aren't able to make it to the Mass, we'll have the rice bowls sitting outside the chapel. You guys will hear more about that in just a little bit. And then secondly, we have 2 more events coming up this semester for CRS ambassadors here on campus. Anybody's welcome to come. If you guys are interested, find me afterwards. I'll be passing out a little flyer to just give you guys more information on that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. So this is the 16th year of the Global Studies Speaker Series, and this is the 14th year where we've done an annual event with Catholic Relief Services. And we've covered the entire world with really interesting events, and for I don't know how many years now, I've been working with Beth Kanabi from the Chicago office of CRS, and I'd like her to come up for a minute and basically tell everybody about CRS and what it does.
Thank you so much, Pierre. Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. It is a real pleasure for Catholic Relief Services to be a co-sponsor for tonight's lecture as part of the Global Studies Speaker Series. For those of you who are not familiar, Catholic Relief Services is the official international aid and development agency of the United States Catholic community. And through your generosity, Catholic Relief Services saves, protects, and transforms lives in over 100 countries around the world, regardless of race, religion, or national origin. CRS works to address the root causes of poverty, to promote the sacredness and dignity of every human life, and to help build more just and peaceful societies. CRS also serves here in the United States, helping Catholic communities by inviting them to live their faith in solidarity with the poor as one global human family. And we do that through opportunities like tonight's lecture, through our CRS Student Ambassador Program at over 100 college campuses around the United States, and through our Parish Leadership Formation Program, which here in the Archdiocese of Indianapolis is sponsored through Catholic Charities, and we have Teresa Chambly and Marilyn Ross with us tonight, who'd be happy to share more information with you. Earlier tonight, we put out some sign-in forms, which should be going up and down the rows, I hope. If you would like to leave your name and email address with us, we'd be happy to connect you. If you're a student, we'll connect you with Nick to learn more about the CRS Student Ambassadors. If you're a local community member, we can connect you with Marilyn and Teresa to learn more about our Global Solidarity Ambassador Program here in the Archdiocese of Indianapolis. And finally, I would just want to thank you for your attention and participation and sharing in our stories tonight. I really do hope that you're inspired by the stories that Sajith will share with us tonight. And if you are so inclined to make a contribution to support the work of Catholic Relief Services, my colleague Grace Finn from our Community Giving Division is here tonight. She'll be in back afterwards, and we'll be glad to talk to you about how you can help support the work that CRS does around the world. Again, we're so grateful for your presence, your sharing of our story, and for your generosity. Your presence and support helps make stories like the ones Sajith will tell us tonight possible, not only for the people of Sri Lanka, but for countries around the world. So we thank you for being here. Thank you for your generosity and your listening tonight.
It is now my pleasure to introduce our speaker. I just met Sajith at dinner tonight, and this is his first time in the United States, and he is touring the entire Midwest, going from various places. And yesterday you were at Notre Dame, is that right? Yeah. I spoke at Notre Dame yesterday, and he's going to be going to various states in the Midwest. Sajith is from a town near Colombo, which is the capital of Sri Lanka, and he's had several careers before becoming a CRS program coordinator for Sri Lanka. He was a business reporter. He has a master's in international business from the United Kingdom, and he taught fifth grade English for many years as well. For the past 3 years, he's been working for Catholic Relief Services on the ground in Sri Lanka, and I know we're all very interested in hearing about it, and I have my Civil Wars and Ethnic Conflicts class here tonight, and we are going to be studying Sri Lanka later this semester, so I'm hoping to get some really good, smart questions from you guys, along with other people. No pressure. Anyway, it's my pleasure to introduce Sajith Silva.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Good evening to everybody. Okay, as Pierre said, my name is Sajith and I come from Sri Lanka. I've been working for Catholic Relief Services over there, and like everybody, I really love what I'm doing. Being a humanitarian worker is really interesting, because as he said, I've started my career as a teacher. So I love teaching kids, interacting with them, making dramas, right? I really loved that. Then I wanted to move into a different career, so I like journalism, so I was a journalist for some time, and I was able to do some wonderful stuff over there, produce a documentary for CNN from Sri Lanka, so yeah. Then I came to United States, UK, I was doing my master's over there, then went back, and then was helping my father-in-law's business for some time, then looking for something. 2 options came up, so I'm a bit attached to church. I'm a Catholic by my birth, so I chose this job, and from that day onwards I really enjoy what I'm doing. What's happening right now in Sri Lanka is something interesting. It's because, during the war, many of our Sri Lankans, especially those who live towards the northern part of Sri Lanka, ethnic Tamils, they started migrating. those who could afford, they went to rich and developed countries. Those who are vulnerable, as usual, they chose to go to the neighboring country, which is India. So around 150,000 Sri Lankans went to India during the course of the war. The war came to an end in 2009. And then these families, now they are returning. So though they've returned to Sri Lanka, it's not easy for them to get back to normalcy, to live ordinary lives, just like anybody over there. Sometimes when they come, they haven't got their legal documents. Sometimes their lands are overtaken by someone else, and family structures are broken, so kids are exposed to vulnerability. There are so many other issues. So we at Catholic Relief Services in Sri Lanka, we help these families to live protected and dignified lives. That's the goal. There are so many refugees in the world. They say there are around 68 million, right? But I'm going to share a story about a family who made their journey to Sri Lanka. And with the support of us, with the support of you all are part of this story. I'm going to tell you why. And they made their life. They are slowly getting back to their lives. They're sharing dreams. They're sharing happiness, just like me. So this father, his name is Christian. His wife is Tarshi. The eldest son, Isaac. Second son, Godwin. And the youngest son is Sesuran, their dog, Tarzan. And you might wonder, who am I, right? So this is my family. My wife is Anne, my daughter, she's Oneri, my son, Aaron. We live in Colombo. And, when I come every day after work, sometimes I do shopping. So my kids come and ask me, both of them, what have you brought for us? Right? So I tell them, I crack a few jokes. I tell them, I got some bread for you. No, that's not we ask. What else have you brought? Then I tell them, I got some eggs for you. No, that's not what we want. Can you guess? Yeah, in Sri Lanka, everybody loves sweets, so they want sweets. Right? So I'm a happy father now. And I was able to share the same happiness through my job with Christian. And Christian was able to make his life journey. So I'm so happy that I was able to help Christian. And it's the support of CRS. CRS is a US organization. So through your donations, so through your paying tax to the government, so all this money had come to Sri Lanka, and that's how we were able to help this family. That's what I said. You're a part of this story. And we made this journey, and we were able to help this family. When I was in UK, my daughter, she was like 3 years of age. She loved dancing. And Beyonce's famous song, Single Ladies, right? She loved that. She used to, shake her hips to that tune. Then my wife and I thought, wow, she likes dancing. Let's put her into a dancing class. And for the last 6 years, she had been dancing. And she has turned herself into a fantastic dancer. And as a father, I feel really proud of her. She's in the middle. So I feel really happy. And then my son, just like any other kid, he's a naughty chap. And, I tried to get a steady picture of him, but this is all I could get. Can you see? Even in this, he had been shaking his hat. This is my world. Okay. All right. So, all right. This is very, very sensitive. Okay. Have you heard about Sri Lanka? Can you raise your hands up if you have heard? All right. Are there any Sri Lankans here? I know. Hi. All right. When I made this presentation, my CRS colleague said, nobody knows about Sri Lanka. Please get ready with your maps and all that. So here I am. And we are towards the southern part of the continent of Asia. You know where India is, right? Oh, all right. So we are towards the southern tip of India, and it's like a pearl, right? So we name it as the Pearl of the Indian Ocean. It's such a beautiful country, and unlike here, we have only 2 seasons. It's rainy and sunny, and we have sunny beaches around the island. So people love going to beaches, and after the war, a lot of tourists do come and visit our country. We have lots of wildlife, elephants, blue whales, dolphins, tigers, no lions, right? Our flag has the picture of a lion, but we haven't got lions. We are the 4th biggest exporter of tea to the world. So, we were colonized by Dutch. Sorry, first of all Portuguese, then Dutch, and then English. So English planters, they came and they did lots of these tea plantations, and that's how we have so many. And from Portuguese I got my name Silva. And we have this rock which is called Sigiriya, and some of you who have visited Sri Lanka might know. This is the so-called 8th wonder in the world, because during the 5th century AD, a king, he built his fortress on the rock, and around it you had like frescoes like this, but only few are remaining right now. So below you have beautiful gardens, and it's such a beautiful place. So if a tourist goes there, they would not miss this place. It's a spicy nation. We have so much of spices, and they say Sri Lanka produces the best cinnamon in the world. They say, they call it in fact true cinnamon for Sri Lankan cinnamon, right? And I in fact got a bottle. If some of you want to smell it, I can give you. So we have around 22.5 million people over there. Land area is 65,610 square kilometers. Climate is tropical. In fact, the land area, you might wonder what it is like. In relative terms, US is 150 times bigger than Sri Lanka. It's the size of West Virginia. Yeah, it's such a small country, but relatively we have a larger population. Around 400 waterfalls. Beautiful country. I love my country, just like any of you would love your country. But tragedy always do strike. So we also face 2004 Boxing Day tsunami. Around 50,000 people died. And CRS, Catholic Relief Services, played a major role in rebuilding, in helping our people. So thank you very much for being with us in our difficult times. And this is one more picture. Around 1,500 people had been traveling because it was a holiday towards down south of the country, and many of them got killed. Very few survivors. And we went through this civil war. It started in 1983. As I told you, around 150,000 went to India, and more people went to other countries as well. War came to an end in 2009 through a military conflict. So it was a gruesome time. The sense of uncertainty that we went through was terrible. You know that we would die at any time, right? That's so common. But having the sense of uncertainty within you, like you will die the next moment when you go to your town, closest town to do your shopping, or when you go to Colombo, if you go in your bus, there might be bomb blast. That sort of uncertainty that we went through. You're perpetually, like continuously be reminded that you would die at the next minute. So it was a traumatic experience for many of our Sri Lankans then, both who lived north and south. In fact, those who lived in the northern part of Sri Lanka went through that time. I mean, many are ethnic Tamils, they went through that time. It was a horrible time for them. They are being interrogated both by the government army, sometimes by the LTT, the so-called terrorist group. So they went through a tough time. And towards the south, the Sinhalese were frightened that there might be bomb blasts. So, terrible time. Luckily, it came to an end, no more bomb blasts. But, we are in a long way to go to receive full democracy, rights for the minorities. This is where the story begins. The story of Christian. He lived towards the northern part of Sri Lanka, in a district called Mana, I think you know, in a village called Adampan. In 1993, it was a very special year. That was the year the president of Sri Lanka, Mr. Ranasinghe Premadasa, was assassinated through a bomb blast while he was attending the May Day rally. And prior to that year, 1992, all the top military brass, all the top officers were also killed through a Claymore bomb towards the northern part of Sri Lanka. So country was at its lower levels, like when it comes to militarily as well as when it comes to governance. And in 1993, the army started an offensive in the northern part of Sri Lanka against the LTTE. And it was so common at times, they used to drop these essential food items from the air. You have seen sometimes that happens in countries. So in Sri Lanka it happened. On a particular day in 1993, in the village where Christian lived, Adampan, they saw a parachute falling, right? So as natural, everybody ran towards it. All the villagers ran towards it. So the parachute was coming down slowly. But as it touched ground, something unexpected happened. Can you guess? Yeah, it was a bomb. It just exploded as it touched ground. According to Christian's father, he's on to your left, around 75 people were dead on the spot, and many of them were injured. So he's a poor agricultural farmer. He was also a postmaster. He decided to send his family, like anybody would do during that time in their context, to send his family to India. Christian was only 14. He was a teenage farmer who used to cultivate his 10-acre rice field, we call paddy field in Sri Lanka. So he cultivated this paddy field all by himself, but he had to leave everything and go to India. But father opted to live in Sri Lanka to look after their houses and the lands. It was a painful separation for young Christian. So Christian said he had to leave his blind grandmother. He couldn't take her to India. And on the other side, he knew that by the time he returns, his grandmother won't be able to survive in that context. And he was attached to his dog, so he had to leave his dog. So he said, this is Adampan where he lived. This is towards the northern part of Sri Lanka. From Adampan to this island called Mana, and to that tip he went to take the boat which would take them to India. So to that end of the island, the dog had followed him. It's a very, very painful separation for this 14-year-old chap. And this journey, it's not an easy journey, because this is the area the LTT was trying to, they were doing the arm trafficking, from country to country. So army of both the countries might think these are the, terrorists. So they might shoot the people, especially those who travel at night. So there is the danger that you might get shot at any time if you do travel at night. So there are so many gruesome stories how they made the journey, how some of the boats capsized and people died. He made this journey. In 1993, he was only 14 years old, and he was a refugee over there. In 2010, Christian's father heard, there is very lack of communication during that time, but still his father heard Christian has grown his hair, and as if, he's losing his mind, because that was a vulnerability. He had to live such a long time as a refugee, and, no dreams, no hopes. So he was losing everything, losing hopes. So father felt so sad, just like any father would do. He went to India, he brought him back to Sri Lanka. That was in 2009, the year that was the peak of the war, that was the year the war ended also. And then, in the same year, he met his wife Tarshi in a wedding, and they both got married. Gave birth to 3 kids over the years, but life was the same. He had 10 acres of land, but he had the agricultural skill within him. But he had no hope within him, no spirit to start it back. He was doing some day labor, earning some meager, income, feeding his family, which is not sufficient at all to feed his family over there. The main thing was no hope for the future, no dreams. And during this time, we started this project to help these returnees. We approached these families. It was not easy. It is interesting that people love to take things. As a refugee, we have noticed that they would love to take materials. Let's say rice, dal, they would take. But from there to make that connection, to build their life, to give them hope that you got all this, why didn't you start your career back? It's not easy to, convince them to start their career back. So that's the vulnerability that these families were going through. The traumatic experience that they had gone through had made them to live the way it is. You would have seen, you might be having certain, similar experiences. That's the kind of vulnerability. Some of you might think, why should you go and help him if he doesn't want? That's the vulnerability that he was going through. So our field officers, this is one of those field officers, they made constant visits to these families. First of all, to make that connection, just to be friends, just to say hello. So for a week, sometimes you made 3 visits to their family to make that initial connection. And then we sat with him. We knew that he has 10 acres of land. We drew a small business plan because he knew how to do the cultivations. And then got him, one day he said, in one of the conversations, when we asked him, why don't you start your career back? Why don't you start your rice fields back? Okay, who would help me to do that? Yeah, he said, fine. we will help you to clear out 2-3 acres of land. Because it was overgrown with bush. Then we helped him to clear the land, sat with him and made the business plan, took him to other lead farmers in the village, because the climate is changing everywhere. Now, for an example, there are particular crops that you would plant during particular seasons. Otherwise, you would be in utter trouble. So we got him to meet other farmers in the village, gave him those skills, counseling, constant visits just to check whether he's on right track. Gave him a water pump towards the northern part of Sri Lanka. It's kind of dry, but the land is quite fertile. You need water and seeds, it will grow. It's that's how those farmers they think. Then gave him groundnuts, peanuts, and in the first cycle of cultivation, he made some income, but with which he could feed his family, but which wasn't enough to make a saving. Then in the second cycle, he himself came and said, okay, now I want to expand. I have 10 acres of land. Would you help me expanding by cultivations? So we helped him to clear out further land, 5 to 6 acres. And this time he said he wants to cultivate rice, pumpkin, and peanuts. It is quite interesting. It could be with your prayers. It could be the generosity that we have shown towards him. Things started working, and at this time, in the second cycle, he got a bumpy harvest, and he could save, after selling his crops, 150,000 rupees, which is equivalent to roughly about a little over $800 US, which is a pure saving for him, right? And at this time, his son, second son, Godwin, he said he wants to study in English medium. Over there we have Sinhala and Tamil. Those are the two major languages. Towards the northern part, it's mostly they speak Tamil, so we have Tamil schools. But somehow or other, this chap got the idea that he wants to study in English. That is the trend over there, right? That is a trend there are trends everywhere, right? So that is the trend. There are, towards southern part of Sri Lanka, you have international schools. They do English medium, education. So Godwin, second son, said he wanted to go to English medium school and he wants to be a scientist. And Christian was able to put his second son to this English medium school. And when Christian told this story, tears were pouring down from his eyes. Those were happy tears. He was so happy to say that part, that I was able to, in his words, I was able to put my kid into this English medium school. So you see, now things are slowly improving, changing in their lives. It's very little bit of help that we gave him, and it's a companionship which really worked, being with him over time. So things are slowly started changing in him. This is Godwin, his second son. In Sri Lanka we have extended family, scenarios like, our parents mostly live with us, even in his family. You see, this is mother, Darshi, and their grandmother. This is Christian's mother and his son. So they live in the same family compound, house. This is our little scientist. So we do hope that he will make his journey in the future. And this is ordinary day in his school. So it's a Catholic school, English medium nursery over there. And we got this photo during the lunch hour. So you can see he's yawning. And towards the northern part of Sri Lanka, mostly it is Hindus and Christians who live. So under our project, we were helping both the groups. And Christian's family is Christian. You understand, right? Christian is the name. So prayer is a major part in their life every day in the morning. So we covered them, in fact, from morning till night for 3 long days. And this is what we saw. They pray every day. And once he comes after school, grandmother feeds him. And this is Isaac, the eldest son. He says he wants to be a pastor now. You see, that's what I said. I have my dreams for my kids. I shared you those dreams, and in their family those dreams are born. Little dreams are born. It took some time, but it is working. And it is interesting. In Sri Lanka, we say, when noodles came to Sri Lanka, like early, it took like half an hour to cook, right? But then they came like 2 minutes noodles. So we used to call instant noodles. So that was a kind of a slogan which we use, like people want things happening so suddenly, right? We feel prayers, we feel anything would work, would be so spontaneous. But when it comes to life, things take time. So sometimes prayers take time, but they do work. So your prayers sometimes, there'll be miracles taking place in the other corners of the earth, but they do take place every day. And this is just like a miracle that we were able to change their lives. From miserable refugee to a happy, dignified father. This is their family. Now they eat nutritious food. Many of them come from their fields. This is an ordinary day in there. They have a 10-acre land, and you see they have hen. Now Christian, he is a lead farmer. Can you remember? I was telling you, we took Christian to other lead farmers. So now Christian himself has become a lead farmer. Everybody comes to him and get his advice. So everybody sees him as an exemplary character in the village, as a success man. So that's very important for others to emulate and to follow him. And Christian, by his nature, he's a very humble and a very happy man. So he's able to share the same happiness with the rest of the people, folk who works under him. And this is a lady who works with Christian over there. This, in their field, they have lots of space over there, just like any other kid would do. They play with the things around. As I was telling you, it's an extended family scenario. So everybody works together. Here you see Christian's sister and Christian father and mother. So while we were doing this video coverage, Christian was expanding his house now, because he has made some savings over the years now. And he wants to have a kitchen and a small room and a bathroom. So you see, things are slowly improving, and he's making, plans for the future. Something interesting happened on the 3rd day that we were doing this coverage. Christian came and said, we love to offer you lunch. According to the Sri Lankan culture and tradition, if somebody comes to their house, they love to offer you tea, some snack. If you stay longer, probably lunch. Why? I would say, in a way, that assures their dignity. That's an indication. That's a, way to show that I'm a dignified man. If somebody comes to my doorstep, I'm able to feed you. So interestingly, the project goal was help them to live protected and dignified lives under our CRS Catholic Relief Services project. So we were, it was like, we were able to understand and perceive that over the years that through our help, Christian has made his journey and he was able to build his dignity, within himself. So that's why we are really happy that we were able to make this journey with him and transform his life. So this is that meal he offered us. As you can see, all the vitamins, all the nutrients are there. And we had like 2 American friends who were with us. They really enjoyed this meal. So we have come to the end of our story. So thank you very much for listening to me. And I do hope, this story is a story of inspiration. So this will really inspire you for you to be more humane, more generous. Because whenever we do help, when we do extend our support to somebody, when we see, they thrive in it, they are happy, we share the same happiness within ourselves. That's a very common human feeling that we all share. That's why I said I love doing what I'm doing. I love when I see that they really take their journey forward. So thank you very much. May God bless you.
Okay, so to follow up on a conversation we had at dinner, you were talking about the role of the church in sort of transcending the ethnic divide during the war. You yourself are Sinhalese and Catholic, and I'm assuming, if he's in the north, that Christian was probably Tamil.
That's right.
Okay, and both the Sinhalese, the majority of Sinhalese are Buddhists. The majority Tamil are Hindu, but what connects everybody is the language. So the Tamil ethnic group speaks Tamil. The Sinhalese ethnic group speaks Sinhala, and that's pretty much the ethnicity. But then you have these religious minorities. The question I have for you is, first of all, 10 years after the war, you're working with Christian. You're both Catholic, but you're Sinhalese and he's Tamil. You're Sinhalese and he's Tamil. How did that go? Was that any kind of an issue? And one of the things that you mentioned to me earlier that I'd like you to maybe talk about with the audience was the role of the church. In that you were saying that it played a role even during the war because there were Catholics on both sides, even though the country was deeply divided in a very, very violent, bloody 25-year civil war with suicide bombers and absolutely horrible, horrendous conflict. Can you talk a little bit about crossing that divide?
Yeah. So as Pierre said, we have Christians, Sinhala Christians, as well as Tamil Christians. So when it comes to the Catholic Bishops' Conference, which is comprised of Tamil bishops as well as Sinhala bishops. So because of this factor, because of this position, that Catholic Church could play a vital role in the reconciliation process, bringing these ethnicities together. For an example, the National Caritas over there, which is the social arm of the Catholic Church, which was carrying out this peace and reconciliation activity for about 30 long years. That was one of their major components in their, social activities. So those who, even the Sinhalese who worked at the down south, they were able to go to north even during the wartime because we had that connection. We had the connection with the Tamil bishops over there. So we were able to penetrate even to the LTT areas during the times of the war. Another interesting fact was that, in Caritas Sri Lanka, which is the social arm, it is not registered as an NGO in Sri Lanka. You might wonder why. Because in Sri Lanka, it's quite interesting that the word NGO, non-governmental organization, has a very negative connotation. Right? I mean, they might think, oh, foreign money is coming in to topple the government. Right? So there is a kind of a negative connotation. So the Bishops' Conference perceived this, understood this long time ago, and they got registered this institution as under a parliamentary act. So during the end of the war, which in 2009, people were like cornered into a no-fire zone area. And then the government asked all the INGOs and the NGOs to move out from the area. And then, naturally, even Caritas attended this meeting, and church stood by its, said, we cannot leave the people. There were like 14 priests who stood with the people in the no-fire zone, and one got killed, as I know, and another got amputated his leg. So it was a gruesome time over there. Like fighting was still happening, even in the no-fire zone. And Caritas stood with the people even until the last minute. And even in, the people were put up in like so-called concentration camps. Like 9 to 10 camps were there, and some of the priests, even some Hindu priests, had been there in those concentration camps with the people. Why? Church felt that, we should be with the people. It's not that we should engage in social work as an institution as such, but it is our call, it is our mission by our nature that we should be with the people. So they stood by it, and the government, in fact, they listened to that. So only we were able to be with the people at the last minute. So
just raise your hand, and I'll help. Questions? Anybody who wants to go first? Anything? It's a good opportunity. Someone? Yes, sir. Yeah, push the button down.
Tell me a little bit about the schooling that occurred with the children during this period of time.
Many of the schools are running because those are run by the government. Those are government schools. Right? We have like private schools towards the southern part of Sri Lanka, but towards north, it's mostly the Tamil government schools. So government paid their salaries, and education was taking place. But because of the bombings, buildings are like all destroyed. So they used to study under trees during the war time, especially to those who are towards the north, especially the ethnic Tamils. And education was taking place, but I don't think not in proper circumstances. The environment was so dangerous. There could be bombs falling, and they had dug like pits along their schools. So if they hear a bomb, they would go and hide it them. So that was there was constant fear in them that there could be bombs at any time, because they were living in that area. That was the warring area, like where the major part of the war was taking place. But towards the southern part of Sri Lanka, education was like schools were running as usual, but there was a fear that there could be bombs targeting these schools. For an example, I could remember once a school in the northern part of Sri Lanka was bombed by the government, right? So in retaliation, the LTT wanted to attack a school in the south. So all the schools in Colombo, they wanted to close down some of the schools on a particular day. That was one incident I could remember. But naturally, towards the southern part, mothers were so frightened to send their kids, especially to the schools in Colombo during that time, because there could be bombs at any time. Constant fear. So, towards both south and north, it was the same, but I would say towards the northern part of Sri Lanka, I mean, that was the area where the war was taking place. They were like going through tough times, very tough times.
Thank you for your moving talk. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that there are lots of different organizations trying to help refugees and just the citizens put their lives back together. So how does CRS work with these different organizations? And what does CRS see as its unique role among all these organizations?
Right. That's right. There are so many other organizations which work for these refugees. As I told you, it's quite interesting that these folks, they love to receive material stuff, right? That's the first thing. For an example, when we visited recently, in one house there were 2 sewing machines. There was one grandmother. We asked, why you need 2 sewing machines? No, this is for my granddaughter, who is so small. Because sometimes some INGOs, they straight away go and try to hand over the different items to these people. But now what they say is always go through the government channels, because they know who really needs these items. So we closely work with the district secretary who is in charge of this area. He knows which community needs that particular support and which area has the most number of refugees, because refugees they have to come through that government channel. So on the other side, we are closely working with the local churches. It's a closely knit community. So if a refugee family comes and stays in their family, the priest would definitely come to know. So we have 2-3 channels. We work through the government district secretary. Then Grama Niladhari is the local government agent. We work through him, and then the local church. So we have 2-3 channels, and that's how we approach these families.
Thank you.
Sir.
So you mentioned earlier that some Americans were traveling with you.
That's right.
And my question is, if any of us were interested in volunteering or helping out like those American travels that you mentioned, if that were possible and how.
Right. There are in fact few interns who come and stay with National Caritas. National Caritas is like the coordinating body over there. So we have 12 dioceses around the country, Catholic dioceses. We have 13 diocesan centers which cover the entire island. So what we do is when interns come from abroad, there are like 2 options. Either you could stay at the national center, or else you can stay in one of the diocesan centers and get into more of the implementing part. At the national level, we have the coordinating body, and right now we have like a Bosnian citizen and a German who is working at the National Caritas. They help us with our work. They also learn about Sri Lanka, about our culture, how we, do this social work. Yeah.
About how many Sri Lankans have been repatriated from India?
So as I told you, around 150,000 people went to India, and soon after the war, there was a big group who came. Now there are roughly around 50,000, 60,000 people have already returned. But even like 2-3 months ago, there was another group. So even the government is a bit keen that they want to get these citizens back to Sri Lanka, because in India, they remain as refugees. They cannot get the citizenship unless, some of the people who have lived they have penetrated the legal systems over there and got the citizenship, but rest remain as refugees. So they love to get back, and government has initiated so many programs, and in fact I heard there is a new northern provincial governor, so he wants to make plans to bring back the rest of the people.
I'm just going to talk loud. Yeah, piggybacking off that, could you speak a little bit more to what the efforts and maybe what CRS role is in those people who find themselves caught in limbo? I know you talked about that 26-year period where people were refugees in a first country of asylum. Now with the 68.5 million refugees you mentioned, you find 85% of them in developing countries in that in-between zone, whether it's in camps or in cities. What sort of efforts are being done to reach that group and help them have opportunities?
Yeah. In fact, CRS has over the years, we have been implementing organizing, we have a center for disabled in Manna Island. Can you remember where Christian went to that island? So in Manna, CRS had been, funding this project. There is a center for disabled. So we give prosthetic and orthotic services because many of them have lost their limbs, even young children, during the last period. So it had been functioning for about, I think, the center had been functioning for about 20 years, and CRS had been funding that center for 10 long years, so prosthetic and orthotic services. Then we have physiotherapy and counseling services. That was one of the other aspects that we were we were reaching out to the local community. Even in this, it's not only the agricultural farmers that we were reaching out to, there were different components under this project. So there was one local organization which CRS was working closely. They were trying to give the returnee youth vocational training so that they would be able to find their livelihood options. On the other side, and there was another group who were involved in child protection and their education, because when some of these families come, many of those kids haven't got their birth certificates, and so it was really difficult to access the government education system. You need to have all these legal documents. So another group which was working closely with the children, because as I told you, sometimes their family structures are broken. These kids are vulnerable to so many things, and we were coordinating with the local child protection officers so that that necessary connection, interaction takes place with them. In fact, we were doing a coordinating part even in this. They were not only here, not only with the agricultural farmers that we were working, but we were working with other different groups and people over there.
Aaron?
So in your personal opinion, from the 10 years since the Civil War actually ended, what have you noticed has been any change or significant change between the two ethnic groups that are in Sri Lanka?
Good, interesting. After the end of the war, after 2009, thank God there are no bomb blasts. I was talking to you about this a sense of uncertainty that we were going through, that traumatic experience. That's no longer there. Okay. Some might call it, some Sri Lankans might perceive that itself as, there is peace in Sri Lanka, right? They might brand it. But I would say, and interestingly, there was another thing happened. In 2015, we had the presidential elections. So the president who, who ran the war, during the time, one who, as if he says he won the war, right? So he was defeated in 2015, and the other group was called the Good Governance Group, right? All right. So that was their slogan. In fact, everybody thought, wow, it's nice, right? Now war is over, we want to reconcile with the community, we need reconciliation, we need true peace, and then we need good governance. There is corruption throughout the country. We don't want that. We don't want politicians to misuse our money. Everybody knows about it. So everybody started voting this it's not new, this party. And they came into power, but unfortunately, they made blunders again. It's so sad, I would say. But there are some salient features that we were able to achieve over this period. So there is countrywide ambulance service, which we didn't have under the previous government, so we have that. And we work with our minorities over there. Even at Caritas, we have lots of, I'm born a Sinhalese, so we have Tamils who are working closely with us. So we have very open discussions because we interact daily. We are like brothers and sisters. So, what they say is, now there is sense that, they can speak. They are not frightened that, there was a thing called white van regime. Like, under the previous regime, if you speak against the government, there was a fear that you might be abducted by white vans. So white van thing, within inverted commas, brought some fear. Especially many of our journalists were abducted and killed during that time. But now, the minority, they feel that they can voice for their rights. At least that openness is there. They feel that they will not be killed just because they advocate for their rights. That environment is there. So there is, of course, that's an improvement, a great improvement from where we were. But I would say, we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go.
Yeah. You have to hold the button down. Oh. Yeah.
On the bottom.
It says push.
Oh. Yeah. Oh. So, Sajith, thank you. Oh, this is working. Sajith, thanks for sharing that story. That's a great story. So this is just one out of 150,000, right?
Exactly.
Success stories. And there is also, in addition to that, several hundreds of thousands of displaced people who stayed within Sri Lanka, right?
That's right.
That also need to be reintegrated back into society. So is anything being done towards that aspect?
Yeah. As I told you, at Caritas level, we have been implementing so many reconciliation programs, like where we take youth as well as, local folks, ordinary villagers from down south to north, from north to south. We have interreligious programs where we bring all ethnic groups together, like, especially the religious leaders. They play a major role. We bring all of them together. We make exposure. For an example, we take down south Buddhist monks towards the north and meet with the Christian and Hindu priests. And we bring the Hindu priests and Christian priests from north to south. And they have made lots of relationship. And first we facilitate the trips first of all, and later we have heard that at government level that they have made trips and they have made friendships. Even at government level, there is a reconciliation body, but I'm not happy about it, to tell you frankly, because we work closely with them, but sometimes they say we haven't got enough resources. But I think it's not the resources, but it's the sake of the conviction, the change of hearts that you really need. So we are working, and it's not only the Catholic Church over there, Muslims, Hindus, everybody. There are groups who are working towards it. So that's a sign of hope that we will make that journey.
So lots to be done still, right?
Lots to be done.
We're going to have a reception outside with the speaker and with Sajith, and also some light refreshments. But there's time for maybe one or two more questions. Anybody have any other questions? Yes.
Hi, thanks
Hello.
so much for speaking. Along those lines that you were just talking about, I'm wondering, I don't really know what the current state of Sri Lanka is, but I'm guessing since, you had all of the Tamil that were 150,000 people who went to India, and now the minority is coming back, and there's still a majority of another ethnic group. I'm wondering what the state is between those two groups. Of course, there are these beautiful efforts being made across religion and across ethnic groups and across different areas, but what does it look like as far as when you bring the minority back who were in another country for 15 years and maybe, or 26 years and maybe haven't even stepped foot in that country?
Yeah. As in any other country would have, there are extremists as well. And even within the government, even within the opposition. So, but they don't find anything wrong in bringing these people back to Sri Lanka. I don't think, nobody sees that. Unless, for an example, when Rohingya migrants came to Sri Lanka, there were like 13 families, I think, or 13 people who came to Sri Lanka. They happened to landed somewhere there. Then there was big haho because I don't know why. They didn't want them. But Tamils returning to Sri Lanka, I don't think a majority takes that as a no. Even the down south Sinhalese, they feel that Tamils went through difficult times. But institutionalized wise, things are divided. For an example, because we have this language barrier. Now here, everybody learns in English. Though, you might be coming from German, Italian, or different other backgrounds, but you have a common language here. But over there, we have Tamil and Sinhalese. They learn, that's their major language, so they study in Tamil and Sinhala. So to train these, we have Tamil and Sinhala, teacher training schools. So it goes down the line. Everything is like institutionalized. So unless you come to one place after all your studies to work together, then you meet all these groups together. But there is another chance where there are lots of international schools now, where the medium is English. So there you see everybody coming together. There they don't fight. I haven't heard in international schools. I've been a teacher in one of the international schools for 6 long years. No, I didn't see anything like that. So there are so many analyses, done, so many interpretations done. Some view it as not as an ethnic issue, some view it as a development issue over there. Because we have also gone through 2 youth insurrections. It's not only an ethnic war. So some view this whole scenario in different perspectives. I don't know which is the right one, but you can still view them in different ways, right? You can interpret in different perspectives.
I'm interested in what the cost to Christian would be to build that expansion onto his house. What percentage of his current income as a successful farmer does he need to set aside so he can pay for expanding the house?
I don't know how much he has made over the years, but he has other plans. Now, one thing we saw was that he's expanding his house. For that, you need at least, in Sri Lankan terms, at least another, let's say, 300,000 rupees minimum to expand that. On the other side, he had his plans for the future. He says he wants to cultivate lemon that will yield him, steady harvest for the next 5 years. So, which I didn't mention you earlier. He had made his plans for the future. So, because he has already got 10 acres of land, and I don't know how much he had made later, which we didn't inquire about, but it seems he is in a steady, solid position right now. He's not rich the way we say, he's not rich, but he's okay from where he was, and he's improving. That's what we saw.
And actually, do you have one? Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. We will have